Compassion means to suffer together. Calm means together, passion, suffer. That's where the root of that word comes from. So being compassionate has that sense of, yeah, I know it. It's really feels shitty. I've been there, done that. What are we learning from it? How can we expand our awareness, our consciousness, our ability to grow? You know, in SQ21, you know, as trained SQ21 coach, a lot of it is what experiences are we going to give them that's going to develop that sense of expanded awareness.
Hey everyone, it's Amy Lynn Durham, and you're listening to Create Magic at Work. Create Magic at Work is on a mission to equip senior leaders with tools they need to be a true quantum leader and actually understand what that means. Improve employee engagement, retain top talent, and transform your workplace culture to have less drama and stress. So let's start making magic. Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Create Magic at Work. Today I have a guest for you that I'm really excited about. He's actually a fellow SQ21 certified coach, and somehow the universe connected us. And Norman, you might have to remind me how. I think it was through Instagram. But anyways, nwolfe is the guest today. He's the founder and CEO of Quantum Leaders. He's a leading voice in bringing about transformation of the core paradigm of business. And Create Magic at Work is all about quantum leadership. So, of course, he needed to be a guest on the podcast. He's a 15-year veteran of Hewlett Packard, has led companies large and small, been a public company director, and has over 30 years consulting and mentoring leaders in a wide range of industries. He's the author of The Living Organization, an application of the core principles of how the world works to how organizations and individuals create their results. It is a new way of thinking and being that can create extraordinary, positive impact for an organization and society. Norman, welcome to Create Magic at Work.
Thank you, Amy. I really appreciate being here, and thank you for that lovely introduction.
Can you tell the guests a little bit more about you and how you wrote The Living Organization, a little bit where you came from?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So, as you pointed out, my background is originally, my major corporate background was Hewlett Packard, and I left them in 1988 and started to consult with organizations, as you pointed out, large and small. I was actually on the board of that public company that you mentioned. I was talking with the CEO, and I asked him why he kept using me as a consultant, and he said, "Norman, it's really easy. You help me execute faster." And I thought that was really interesting. As I began to look at and the clients I have worked with in the past and looking at the current situation, I began to realize that the biggest challenge companies were having was how do they actually execute, and what gets in the way. And so with the idea of focusing on actually achieving the outcomes we plan, I mean, we do the strategic planning and all of that, and that's all wonderful, lots of fun off-site, so we all have a good time and go through some processes. But at the end of the day, it's how do we execute? And what I realize is what gets in the way is of what I call the fundamental paradigm of business, which is we think of an organization as a machine of production. And leadership's role is to organize, design, program the machine, figure out how you're going to set up component parts of the machine, and then plug people into those components as if they are just that, components of the machine. And that really doesn't work, because what an organization really is a dynamic human social system. So I began to look at, okay, so, you know, we look at our human bodies and you look at life in general, and complex organisms are made up of equally complex organisms. So you got cells form into organs form into the body. And so what if an organization was the next level of complex organism, where you would have cells, organs, individual bodies, collective bodies? What if we treated the collective body under the same principles we treat human beings? And that's what led to the Living Organization. And I began to realize that somewhat unconsciously over the course of my career, I kept falling to the notion that organizations were living things with souls, purpose, persona, ego, shadow, maturity, and all of those things played into what actually either created success or got in the way. So that's what I led to writing the book, and
Yeah,
continues to be my calling in life.
I think that is really insightful to view an organization or a company like a living organization, like a living thing. And I'm just I'm just riffing right now. I'm thinking back when you were sharing that. I wonder, and you can comment on this if you want, but I wonder if when you were observing everyone plugging people in to roles as if they were a machine, if that comes from the systems that were created at the turn of the century, where it was more, factory type working or industrialization. And I think that may have worked then. Now, with technology, with AI, with, I would say, global consciousness a little bit more elevated, the way the workplace has evolved, that doesn't work anymore. And I think that's why this is so critical to talk about if someone's still maybe stuck in that old paradigm, if you will.
I totally agree with you. And in fact, in my book, I have a sort of an appendix that goes into the history of business. And yes, it was created at a time in the early 1900s when the environment was fundamentally different. We had mostly people coming out of the agricultural community or the mercantiles going into manufacturing or to, modern corporations. And they weren't as educated. The work was mostly mundane, very repetitive. The focus was on efficiency as opposed to, say, creativity. And you couldn't really rely on the people to make complex decisions because they just didn't have the experience or the background or the information even to do it. Life's changed. We've got a higher educated workforce. We've got life changing rapidly, so you need a much more responsive organization. You've got, as you say, global awareness, global consciousness going on. It's not just my local community. Competition is coming from all different angles. So, it's really showing the shortcomings. Well, looking at an organization as an efficient machine was ideal for the first 50 years of the 20th century. It probably came through okay, but during the second half of the 20th century, we began to see it breaking down. And then, of course, by the turn of this century, it's really obvious. And what I've discovered is even with all the awareness that's brought to it through the academics and the books being published and conscious capitalism and holacracy and self-managed teams and all of it, they don't work because we still try to make those things work inside a machine way of thinking, and it breaks down. It breaks down very rapidly. So that's where I began to say, well, let's first change the way we look at a machine. And that changes the leadership role. And we talk about compassionate leader. If we think of an organization as a living person, then the leader becomes more like a parent, hopefully a very good parent, a parent whose objective is not to optimize the efficiency of the machine, but to develop, nurture, and grow its capability and maturity. It's like taking a 12-year-old and wanting to turn it into a productive 20-year-old. Right? You don't just give it a set of processes to follow. It talks about life experiences. What did you learn from it? How can you incorporate that into your future decisions? That's what leaders need to start doing. That's how you bring out the greater capacity of humans. And then if you look at a collective of people, a team within an organization is a living being. And within the department, you have teams. That's living beings. And if you look at the collectives, then you look at how do I mature the collective, not each individual within it. because the collective will naturally influence the individuals within it. Just like my body and my thoughts about my body and thoughts about myself affect the cells within my body. The same thing happens within collectives. So
Yeah.
that's where the paradigm shift began to happen.
Yeah, really great insights, especially you mentioned the complex thinking part. Things move so fast now within organizations, within business, within the corporate landscape, that as a leader, you can't. There's a couple of tie-ins I thought of while you were speaking. The parent one, the parental role of the leader, if you will, but then, and also the complex thinking that's required of someone in a leadership role now that wasn't necessarily required a few, decades ago. And I think there's a tie in there, because if you're a leader that is trying to control outcomes and not trusting your team to make the proper decision, that can really put you in a space. I thought of this analogy of the parent and the child, where the parent does everything for the child, and then the child goes out on their own, and they don't know what to do. That's because right. They can't think for themselves. Right. And I think the key to what we're talking about with this has really been a cool evolution, because yes, you have to learn these elevated leadership skill sets of quantum leadership, because I have to be able to trust you when you're out there, that when something happens, that you're going to tap into your inner wisdom and make the right choice. Whether we call that quantum leader or spiritual intelligence, but it's critical now. And I don't think it was when we're talking about, decades ago, like you were saying.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And I like the way you said that. Leaders recognize that they're responsible. They need to be in control. But if you're in control of how they do it and what they do, everything you become the bottleneck. Everything flows through you. They depend on you making the key decision, just like you said with the child who never learned to do it on their own. And so if I'm a leader and I really want to unburden myself, delegate to my people, allow them to make more crucial decisions because they're more in touch with the customer and all of that. I can't do it unless they're capable of it. I often say you can't delegate the checkbook and the family finances to an 8-year-old. Right? But if I had a 22-year-old, I can share that with them if I develop them along the way. And they knew how to do it. I could say, hey, why don't you manage the budget for us? Or because you're now skilled and capable and experienced. So leaders spend so much of their time in the traditional way thinking about how do I make the decision so they execute more efficiently, instead of thinking, how do I develop them so they can make those decisions on their own so I don't have to? And that's where the notion of compassionate leadership really starts to come into play, because if you think about what compassionate leadership is, and you think about nurturing the maturity and the development of people, they sort of go hand in hand, right? You can't be a dictatorial, authoritative parent and expect your child to grow up in a nurtured way. But I can be a loving, caring parent and expect my child to respond positively. So they do go hand in hand. So this whole shift to this thinking of an organization as a living being that you want to develop and nurture, it sort of evokes the need to be a compassionate leader.
I'm curious to hear your thoughts on now what. You've done that. You feel like you're being a compassionate leader. You feel like you're trusting your team to make complex decisions. You hand over the reins, and a mistake happens, and chaos ensues. What now, as that leader?
Well, that's an interesting question, the way you set that up. So again, go back to family dynamics. As a parent, I've given my son the keys to the car, and he's gone out and he's done well. And then all of a sudden he gets into a major accident. His friends had talked him into drinking. He knew better, but he wanted to be part of the crowd, and so he made the decision, which was a bad decision, but he made it. Now, what do you do? Right? I actually give you a real life example. My daughter came home one day. She was about 14. She knocks on my door to my office and comes in and says, "Dad, I have to tell you something." I go, "What's that?" He goes, "Well, I was out at a beach party the other night." And I go, "Yeah." "Well, the kids were drinking." I go, "Yeah." She goes, "Well, I drank with them." I said, "Oh, really?" Now, part of me was going, "What are you doing? What's the matter with you?" And on and on. And inside my head, there was this whole tirade of lashing out at her. What I said to her instead was, "How did you feel about that?" What did she said, "Well, I really wasn't comfortable. I kept in the back of my mind thinking the police are going to come any minute." And so I said, "Well, what have you learned? What did this experience teach you?" I share that because it's a real life experience. We as human beings, when our kids or our employees do something wrong, the natural tendency is to get really upset. Part of it is our anger at ourselves. Then we do a good enough job teaching them. Part of it is upset at the potential ramifications, like the son just destroyed a car, maybe even caused some harm to somebody. Question is, what did you learn from that? Look, that's how do we mature by having life experiences. And the key is, how do we facilitate that? How do we turn that life experience into a learning opportunity? That's also part of what being a compassionate leader is. Compassionate leader isn't just about loving somebody or being nice to them. It's really about being compassionate. Compassion means to suffer together. Calm means together, passion, suffer. That's where the root of that word comes from. So being compassionate has that sense of, yeah, I know it. It's really, really feels shitty. I've been there, done that. What are we learning from it? How can we expand our awareness, our consciousness, our ability to grow? In SQ21, as trained SQ21 coach, a lot of it is what experiences are we going to give them that's going to develop that sense of expanded awareness. You can't teach it in the class. It comes from life experiences. The question is, when life happens, what do we do about it? So back to your original question, what do I as a leader do when, my VP of sales just made a catastrophic decision and it's going to cost us customers? Well, what do you learn from it? I had a mentor early in my life that said to me, and actually said to the whole team, "I expect everybody to make the same mistake once." I expect you to make mistakes, and I want you to make mistakes, and I expect you to make the same mistake once. You make it twice, you're in trouble. You make it once, it's a learning experience. But we as leaders have to be okay with that. And the way we get okay with it is to recognize life doesn't die when a mistake happens. No mistake, seriously, is going to cause the bus to go off the road and crash and burn. Now, the other part of that, though, it goes to what I said earlier. If I, as a leader, and I actually have a client that has just done this, so it's very real to me. If I delegate to somebody responsibilities without discerning the capability and maturity to make those decisions, that's like giving my checkbook to my 8-year-old and saying, you manage the family budget. That would be absolutely inappropriate. Now, if I do that and they make a mistake, who's got the learning opportunity there, right? And I have a client that actually has done that, and it's really caused him some problems. He caused an investigation by his corporate parent, and it really kind of, and I sat with him as his coach, and I go, let's learn from that. What did you learn from that experience? Don't do that again. And he actually started to do it again because he's got a very kind heart and he wants to trust people and he wants to give them opportunity. but you can't give. I love to say you can't delegate into a void. It's not fair. It's not fair to you. It's not fair to the company, and so yes, there's a balance there. But if in fact, like you said, they are capable, they're not likely to make a major catastrophic mistake. Sometimes, like if my son, drove the car, got drunk, and actually hit somebody and killed them, yeah, they're going to suffer some consequences, and I can't. It would be inappropriate of me to not let them suffer that consequence, because that's where the learning happens.
Yeah.
Long answer. I'm sorry if I took too long.
No. I think that's important for the listeners to think about, because we're talking about mistakes, and we're talking about, as a leader, saying, okay, what did you learn from that? And, Dana Zohar, quantum leader, she says innovation can come from mistakes and from chaos. So where can you uncover that innovation? Where can you uncover that quantum leap, if you will, from mistakes and chaos and polarity, right? At the same time, you might have to do a mirror check and make sure you were in alignment with your leadership, and that you didn't give the 8-year-old the keys to the car, or the pen to the checkbook, or whatever that may be. I think that's really important. I really also think that a theme that you've touched on that I really want to highlight is, especially, I just want to touch on this for my audience and sort of the spaces I play in, like Instagram. I love the creativity I get to play around with on Instagram. And there's a lot of spirituality, memes, quotes, this and that, and leadership, and everything's so positive, and just say an affirmation. And, some of it's a little bypassing, and some of it can border on toxic positivity. And especially if you are leaning that way in the workplace, that can be dangerous at times, because people that might need to have a voice might not have one. And I love how you're like, this is life. Like, these are the tools that you can weightlift in. So when a situation arises, to go back to SQ, you can maintain inner and outer peace. And you reminded me of something from SQ when you referenced it, was, thank you for the practice. If when a lesson comes up, oh, thank you, I screwed that one up, but thanks for the lesson. Thanks for the practice. I'll wake up tomorrow and try again. And I was really having a rough time a couple weeks ago. And I was just so like, gosh, I've done so much work, and so I'm a spiritual intelligence coach, and I'm so irritated right now. Like, haven't I done enough? Why am I getting? And then this passage popped up on my phone, and it said, maybe the universe isn't really testing you. Maybe it's giving you an opportunity to practice who you say you are.
Yeah.
And I was like,
I love that.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for the slap in the face that I needed, right? So to tie that into leadership, it's like, hey, maybe these situations, if you think you're a great quantum leader, servant leader, maybe these situations are coming up for you to practice who you say you are. And how are you going to do that?
And I also think, Amy, on top of that, it's not just practice, it's the recognition that life unfolds in layers. There was a time in my life where I used to bemoan, almost, you brought this up when you were talking about what happened to you 2 weeks ago, or over the last couple of weeks, I used to feel that, God, I've done so much work. I've done all these workshops. I've done all this exploration. I've deflated my ego, blah, blah, and go on. And I've hit pillows, and I've slammed stuff. I've gone through all of that stuff, and yet I'm still got all these issues coming up. Well, I finally realized I'm always going to have issues coming up. until I evolve into a perfect human being, which I don't think ever quite happens. Um, Maybe for some, but I think as far as I've traveled, I still think there's 10 times more to go. So life's always going to unfold. And I like the way you say they're just opportunities, they're gifts. And that's what I try to engage my clients in thinking. When a challenge comes up, when something is really upsetting you and frustrating you, and you're almost to the point of anger, even rage, just recognize it's a gift. The universe, life, whatever you want to call it, God, if you're that oriented, is offering you a gift to look at something that's going to increase your capacity to be more loving, more compassionate, more effective, more productive. Whatever it is, it's a gift. And so embrace it and use it as an opportunity to expand and grow. And that's where you begin to find, really, that's where compassion starts to come in. Like I said, compassion means to suffer together. When I have experienced what you experienced just now, you described, I can go, yeah, I get it. I can be with you in that space. I can be compassionate with you. I can suffer with you and be together and give you the sense of, and your life, you're not going to die. Your life's going to go on. You're going to have new opportunities show up. And isn't that beautiful? And all of a sudden the energy shifts, the focus shifts, and we become creative. Like Donna says, the creativity comes out of chaos. One of the problems I've always talked about that's wrong with the machine paradigm, efficiency tries to eliminate variability. That's almost the definition of efficiency. You don't want a lot of chaos. You want things to be efficient. You don't want variations in the stream. Problem with that is innovation comes out of chaos. So if you eliminate chaos, you're also eliminating innovation. They kind of go hand in hand. So how do you embrace chaos? How do you embrace uncertainty? How do you embrace volatility in a way that recognizes it's there to really create opportunity? COVID was a terrible disruption to the world, but look at all the innovation that came out of it. It's amazing what we're beginning to see as an outgrowth of the COVID pandemic.
So good. So good. So for me, for everyone listening, this efficiency, when you were talking about how efficiency leaves out variability, I thought, how can someone, I have all of these thoughts. So Harvard Business Review came out with a study recently, partnered with another company. I'll put it in the show notes, where they found that a leader who is wise and compassionate decreases burnout within their organization by 64%. And you have to have both the wise and the compassionate. You can't just have the compassionate and you can't just have the wise, because that decreases the effectiveness. Right. But if you're a wise and compassionate leader, burnout decreases by 64%. So it starts with us working on how can I be a wise and compassionate leader, which you and I both have trained and studied and how to coach on that. The efficiency, when you said efficiency leaves out variability, I thought, that's how we can work, how we can start with ourselves, because that's the only place we can really start, where we have maybe a semblance of control. And that's like the perfectionist. How efficient and I tend to be a hyperachiever. I score in those areas, and it's actually a detriment at times. The perfectionist, how efficient can I be? How can I? And you just had you hit me with this light bulb moment where I was like, oh my gosh, if I'm so efficient, I'm going to leave out like spaces where I can leap and have these amazing growth opportunities with the Create Magic at Work brand or with my practice, if I am way too far on the pendulum on that efficiency space. So I just wanted to share that light bulb moment when you said that with everyone, because I think a lot of high potential elevated leaders can fall into that being over efficient or that perfectionist space. And if you take a look back and scale back, it might actually be holding you back a little bit.
I want to pick up on something you said, which I think is critical to enhance what you just said.
Mm-hmm.
If you're too much on one side, it's not, I don't want to throw out efficiency and become, let's all embrace just chaos and live in the chaos, and because that's equally as dysfunctional. I've had clients who were so unsystem, unprocess focused. It's like, yeah, we'll just figure it out as we go. That can kill a company just as much as being overly efficient, highly uh, mechanistic. The key is to have balance. Carl Jung says that life is about bringing forward into consciousness that which is not in our preferred style. So we have an ego, which is really the definition of our preferences of how we'd like life to be. And everything that isn't in our preferences, we tend to relegate into the background, which he called the shadow. Well, those are just undeveloped skills. So I might be a heavy thinking oriented person and not high on the feeling. But that's okay up until a point, because I have to start bringing the feeling side into the equation so that I'm more balanced. So I like the concept of balance.
Yes, I'm so glad you said that, because I think that applies to literally almost everything in life.
Absolutely.
Is this in balance?
That's
whether
right.
I'm eating or whether I'm drinking or whether I'm working or playing, or I mean, we could think of a million different examples. So thank you for sharing that. And also, I just have to say, I don't know if you saw or heard, but we did so for the listeners, if you want to go back, because you mentioned shadow and Jung, I did an episode with a shadow work expert a few episodes ago, and it was called Facing Your Shadow at Work. So if anyone wants to dip back and take a listen to that one with Rebecca Eigen, that was a fun one, because we talked about shadow, and you can dive into that a little bit more.
If you think about a collective as a living being, then naturally they're going to have, as Jung would call, a preferred style of operating. They'd be a thinking type or an extroverted or an introverted type. And that means the opposites will be undeveloped. And the key in maturing somebody is really to bring forward those undeveloped parts so that you're more balanced, you're more holistic, you're more integrated. Whatever words you want to use, that's really the key to the whole thing.
Yeah. So I want to hear, because I mean, your company is all about quantum leaders, and I still feel like when I'm talking to individuals, they're like, what is that? So I want to hear from you. What is quantum leadership?
I think it's got the reason I'm so thoughtful in responding, because I think it has a lot of depth and nuance to it. I don't think it has a simple answer. For me, a leader is somebody who influences others, and they influence others to help make to enhance the ability for whoever they're working with, usually as a collective, to make a bigger impact in society. Right. Collectives come together, whether it's a business or a nonprofit or a government agency or an educational agency. People come together in a collective because they have a common goal to serve, to provide some value to society. We can lose that focus, but that's really why anybody comes together. So to me, a quantum leader is somebody who recognizes the nature of what a collective is, and is really facilitating its ability to produce that impact it wants to make. A leader by definition is anyone who influences somebody else. So a quantum leader is somebody who influences others to make a greater, more positive impact. So that's my definition. Now, I say that that's sort of a simple, almost marketing speech thing, but it's got a lot of nuance. It covers the areas of compassion, It also means that a leader, especially a business leader, is somebody who is skilled at operating a business. You got to know how to balance the finances. You got to know how to manage your resources. You got to know how to develop the people and enhance their ability to do it. And you got to know how to guide the collective. You got to know how to interpret the tea leaves of society and marketing. But at the end of the day, it really, for me, comes down to a key element, and it just comes out of my own life. When I learned to go from the head to the heart, to me, what I call the heart center, which I learned from, I picked up from one of my spiritual teachers. But for me, the heart center became the place where I can consciously shift the energy of my body to be in a state of intuition and insight. And when I open to that, and it's also the place where I stimulate that sense of care and compassion, not just for others, but for myself as well. So to do all those things, I think a quantum leader needs to do, the foundation of that is being able to consciously shift to living from a place of the heart, not in place of the head, but in balance with the head. And that to me is what a quantum leader is.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. That was lovely.
Thank you.
I am shuffling my journal prompt card deck that I authored for career and workplace. And we're going to pull a message for everyone listening today that hopefully uplifts you, and for Norman for being a guest. So let me feel which one. This one's coming up. This is interesting. We got motivation, and the illustration on the card are the turtles going to the ocean. Keep going. And the affirmation is, I stay mentally strong when, oh gosh, this is so in line with what we're talking about. Chaos, learning lessons, mistakes. The affirmation is, I stay mentally strong when faced with adversity, knowing that success is the only possible outcome. So, Norman, you get to answer a question on the fly from the card.
Okay.
And this could be, helpful for the listeners too, if you want to keep your consultant coach hat on and all that. What actions can you or someone else implement that can move them out of their comfort zone?
It's funny. The very first thing that pops into mind is it takes me back to what I was just saying, and move into the heart center. Because what creates my comfort zone is the feeling of having a sense that life works a certain way. So I feel comfortable in that. When I get uncomfortable, I have two choices. I can either lock myself up and avoid it, or I can open to it. And that's where the perseverance comes from, that the turtles marching into the ocean represents. So the only place I have found that allows me to sit in the eye of the storm of chaos or discomfort is in the heart center, because when I experience heart-centered energy, basically pure love, unconditional love, divine love, whatever you want to call it, I have the capacity to be compassionate with myself and the challenges I'm facing, and that stimulates my ability to persevere. So, go into the heart center.
Love it. And if you're listening and you're like, well, how do I do that? That's what we're here for, to help you be the guide along that journey. So on that note, Norman, if people want to learn more about Quantum Leader, the living organization, how can they connect with you? And of course, we put everything in the show notes, but.
Yeah. Well, the easiest ways to find out about what we do is go to our website, www.quantumleaders.com. If they go to quantumleaders.com/podcast, I make available to all podcast listeners a free download of the first 3 chapters of my book so they can understand the principles underlying the living organization, which also underlies how individuals create outcomes as well. And they can reach me via email at nwolfe@quantumleaders.com.
And Instagram. I'm just saying that somehow we connected on Instagram, and I was surprised. But yeah.
I don't remember how we connected. I don't do Instagram or Facebook a lot, but however we connected, there you go.
Yeah, there you go.
I've got Twitter account and Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn, but those are not the best way to get a hold of me. Someday I'm going to have my social media presence, but I haven't done that yet.
Well, thank you for the download of the first 3 chapters of your book, of The Living Organization. I will definitely put that in the show notes as well. And thank you for all of the wisdom that you shared today and for the amazing conversation. We definitely sent some magic to everyone. So thank you for being on Create Magic at Work.
Thank you, Amy, and thank you so much for inviting me. It's been a pleasure having this conversation with you.
Yeah, thank you for being here. Hi, everyone. Amy Lynn Durham here. I really hope you enjoyed today's episode. All the show notes and links can be found at createmagicatwork.net, or you can just look in the show notes in the episode and they're right there for you. Come back each week and make sure you subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. Keep joining us for more exciting episodes where we help you transform workplace culture to leaders that create less drama and stress and have high productivity and profitability. You have the power to create a burnout-free workplace right now. You can gain access to my new course, Create a Burnout-Free Team and Workplace, where you'll receive step-by-step tutorials in creating a team and organization that thrives. Click the link in the show notes to join us. I hope we brought a little magic to your day. Sending magic to everyone, and see you next time.